Hello, my name is Pastor Kimball, and welcome back to A Closer Walk. Today we are beginning unit number 4 of our Experiencing God series. We want to just say how excited we are that you're here with us and you're joining us in this experience, and we're just looking forward to how God is transforming your life in a very special way. Today our unit 4 is going to be about love and God's invitation. You'll find the beginning of it on page 68 of our member books and page 92 of our youth edition. But let me take a moment and review the memory verses that we've had from the previous lessons that we went over. In unit number 1, our memory verse was John 15:5. And if you remember, and I'd just like for you to just kind of say it with me because it's something that I want to have you have committed to memory. And it says, I am the vine and you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. That's you remember our verse, and that verse is really profound and helps us to focus in on what this whole thing is all about. Unit number 2, we talked about Psalms 20:7. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. That was really exciting. And then in unit number 3, we went over Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 and 38 as our memory verse. And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And then today, our memory verse is taken from John chapter 14, verse 21. Whosoever has my commands and obeys them, he is the one who loves me. He who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love him and show myself to him. Well, welcome to this journey now. We're going to begin to move forward in our Experiencing God series. Unit number 4, day number 1, to know God. Page 70 in your member books and page 94 in our youth edition. We're going to be focusing on your love relationship with God. Why should we focus on your love relationship with God? In other words, why should you even love God? The reason is because God works through those he loves in order to carry out his purposes in the Word. See, in this section, we want to explore some ways God invites you to get involved with him in his work. The key to experiencing God is knowing God. And we get to know God by experiences. Do you know about God? See, God comes through unique experiences where he reveals himself to you. And here is an example. Let's take Abraham in the book of Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 8. I want you to read that for yourself. If you haven't read it, that is a good reading. You need to read Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. And if you read it for yourself, I want to just kind of review what you will find there. And then let me ask a couple of questions if you have already reviewed it. What did God ask Abraham to do? You remember that? When God asked Abraham to make a sacrifice, to sacrifice his only son. And then what did God do for Abraham? Well, you remember after the incident and Abraham had shown himself faithful, God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, meaning the father of many nations. And the other thing that we see here in this story is that Abraham also found an experience that he had with God. And in Abraham's experience, you look and see, what did God call Abraham? He called him the father of many nations. And then Abraham, out of his experience for God, called the place where he made that sacrifice, he called it a name that it represents the character of God that he experienced. He called it Jehovah Jireh, which means the God, my God, will provide. And so God provided him with the sacrifice, the ram in the bush. And Abraham, out of his love and compassion for God, named the place God will provide. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about how have you experienced God and what name would you call him? As you look at the names that you call, that you might call God based on your experiences, let's take a moment and look back at the 7 realities that is the basis for our Experiencing God series and apply that to Abraham's life. You see that number 1 is God's at work around us, and he's always at work around us. And so we see that God was at work around Abraham in bringing up his son and establishing his son as the heir of many nations. And then we see that God pursues Abraham with a love relationship that was real and personal. That God demonstrated his love by taking Abraham and Sarah through those experiences so that they would have a son at such a late age. And then number 3 was God invited Abraham to become involved in his work. He told Abraham what to do, and that was to take his son to Mount Moriah and sacrifice his son. And then that we see number 4 was that God speaks through the Holy Spirit, through prayer and circumstances, and the church to reveal himself and his purposes and his ways. And God revealed himself to Abraham through this experience. And then God's invitation for him to work that always leads to a crisis of belief. Can you see the crisis of belief that Abraham would have to face when God asked him to sacrifice his only son? What a crisis he must have felt at that moment when he believed God, but at the same time could not understand why God would ask him to do that. And then number 6 is that you must make major adjustments in your life to join God at what he's doing. And so Abraham's adjustment was that he had to be willing to take his son up to that place of sacrifice by himself and prepare the offering as God had commanded him to, and be prepared for whatever God would bring his way. And then number 7, we know that you come to know God by experiencing and obeying him, and he accomplishes his work through you. And so in so doing, God accomplished his work in preparing a people that would be the father of many nations, that is through Abraham and his son Isaac, Jacob, and through the children of Israel. So God was at work, and Abraham joined him, and out of that experience, God showed himself. And now Abraham then said of that place, Jehovah Jireh. He experienced God as a provider. Can you describe an event in your life where you've experienced God? Have experienced God? If you were to put a name to it, what name would you call him? I want you to look at page number 72 in your member guide and page number 92 in your youth guide. And I want you to check off the name or the title in the book that personally reflects the name that you would call God based on your experiences. There are many names that God is known by, many titles and many characteristics and descriptions, and that's designed so that you would have a plethora of experiences that way you can see that God was at work in your life. Perhaps God has been your provider, perhaps he's been your comforter, perhaps he's been your friend, perhaps he's been the light for you in the midst of a dark time. So there are so many acronyms and so many adjectives that fit God, and I want you to just ponder those and think about the time that God revealed himself to you. Think about these experiences and then ascribe a name that you know to him. Well, in summary, let's say knowing God only comes through experiences, and he reveals himself to you. And then the second thing we want to remember is that you can know God more intimately as he reveals himself to you through your experiences with him. And then finally, what truths and scriptures and statements did you get out of today's lesson? Because it's important that out of today's lesson, that thing that stands out to you the most, that you write it down in order that you might capture the moment, capture this time in our journaling and in the books where you would reveal what God is doing for your life. And then after you've written it down and after you've captured it, then structure a prayer where you would ask God to cause this truth where he has revealed himself to you to be a reality in a real and a practical way in your life so that you might experience God personally. And then I'd like to ask that you would, as you continue to join us by way of the internet and by way of the electronic medium, that you join us in the blogs and postings of your experiences, so that we can share with you, so that you can share with others online as we experience God. And don't forget, there's a live streaming that you'll be seeing on the bottom of your screen, the location where we will be streaming live as well as posting our daily devotions. I look forward to seeing you on the next